Why is it that the harder you try to defend yourself, the guiltier you look? Think about it. When someone questions your worth, your first instinct is to explain, to justify, to fight for your dignity. But deep down, you know the more words you spill, the weaker you appear. It's a trap we've all fallen into, believing that defense equals strength. Machiavelli warned the opposite. True power is never in explanation, but in refusing to play the game at all. He said nothing, and yet the court trembled. A rumor spread. A rival whispered accusations. The room turned to him, expecting outrage, denial, an avalanche of reasons. He gave them silence. He gave them a still face. And in that moment, his power grew. This was Machiavelli's brutal law. Never defend yourself. Defense is confession. Justification is surrender. The more you explain, the weaker you appear. Power does not explain. Power does not beg. Power dictates. Machiavelli saw this clearly in the unstable courts of Renaissance Italy. Accusations were weapons, and explanations were wounds. If a prince defended himself against every charge, he bled publicly. He looked guilty even when he was innocent. He fed the rumor by acknowledging it. He gave the enemy what they wanted: his energy, his attention, his words. But the prince who stood silent? The prince who absorbed the storm and gave nothing back? That prince terrified his rivals. Because silence is ambiguity. Ambiguity is power. When you defend yourself, you tie your reputation to the judgment of others. You tell the world, my worth depends on whether you believe my explanation. That is slavery. Machiavelli teaches the opposite. The sovereign projects strength by refusing to kneel before opinion. He knows that people forget insults, but they never forget the aura of unshakable presence. Think of Cesare Borgia, Machiavelli's dark model for the prince. He was accused of betrayal, cruelty, conspiracy. Did he defend himself? Never. He struck, or he waited, but he never justified. When rivals spat accusations, he let their words echo into emptiness. The silence made him look untouchable. The rumors rotted, but his aura endured. This is the paradox. Defense feels like strength, but reads as weakness. Attack feels like arrogance, but reads as sovereignty. And silence, when chosen, feels like absence, but radiates fear. Why does this work? Because human beings are wired to read confidence, not content. The words of a defense rarely matter. What matters is that you needed one. By defending yourself, you admit dependence. You admit that their judgment defines you. And once you admit that, you have already lost. Machiavelli warns us, power is theater. Every gesture, every pause, every silence is performance. But the audience is not rational. It does not weigh evidence like a courtroom. It feels, it reacts, it believes strength over logic, confidence over evidence. That is why justification is a trap. Every time you explain yourself, you climb down from the throne to stand in the dock. You take the role of defendant in your own story. And defendants do not command, they plead. Consider your own life. Have you ever noticed how the person who endlessly explains themselves in a meeting, in a friendship, in a relationship, seems smaller with each sentence? Every word is proof of insecurity. Meanwhile, the one who states their point once, then sits in silence, grows larger by the second. This is Machiavelli's law at work. The strong do not scramble to be understood. They are content to be misinterpreted, because they know time vindicates and silence terrifies. Let us descend deeper. Why do we rush to defend? Because the human ego is fragile. We fear being misunderstood, being labeled unfairly, being excluded. We crave the comfort of explanation. But Machiavelli calls this hunger a weakness. He writes that rulers must learn to seem, not to be. They must cultivate the appearance of control, even when the storm rages within. Defending yourself rips off the mask and shows your nerves. Remaining silent hardens the mask until it becomes your armor. Look at history. The generals who survived scandal, the CEOs who ignored critics, the artists who refused to explain their work, the rulers who gave no interviews. Their silence became myth. Their refusal to defend became a presence larger than their words could ever be. Even in modern life, the principle holds. The person who claps back at every insult online bleeds credibility. The one who ignores the noise seems untouchable. The colleague who justifies every decision sounds uncertain. The one who simply says, "This is my decision," and moves on, that one gains respect. Machiavelli's brilliance was not in teaching cruelty for its own sake. It was in revealing how perception shapes power. And perception is ruthless. It punishes the defensive and rewards the sovereign. So here is the first blade of his law. Never explain downward. Do not speak to those who are not equal to your power. Do not argue with those who already decided to misunderstand you. Your words will not convince them. They will only exhaust you. Instead, let your silence accuse them. Let their gossip echo unanswered. Let their slander rot in the air. You have better things to do than chase every rumor. But Machiavelli does not leave us with silence alone. He knew that silence without action becomes weakness. The prince must balance. He must choose when to remain still and when to strike. The refusal to defend must be paired with decisive demonstration of authority. If you do not answer with words, you must answer with outcomes. That is the rhythm. Silence, then proof. Not chatter, but reality. Not defense, but dominance. Think of the courtroom metaphor again. Imagine two rulers. One rushes to deny every charge, pleading innocence. The other says nothing, then 3 days later wins a battle, passes a decree, gains an ally. Who is respected? Not the talker, the doer, the one whose silence was followed by fact. This is what Machiavelli teaches us. Words are wind, deeds are iron. Defending yourself with words is brittle. Demonstrating yourself with action is unbreakable. And here comes the brutal psychology. People do not remember whether your defense was persuasive. They remember whether you seemed shaken. They do not remember whether the accusation was fair. They remember whether you acted like it hurt you. And if you looked wounded, you lost. The prince must be made of colder steel. He must look untouchable, even when he is bleeding inside. He must act as if slander is beneath him, because once the people see that their words cannot touch him, they stop wasting them. This is why Machiavelli says it is better to be feared than loved. Love depends on constant defense, constant reassurance. Fear depends on presence and silence. The feared prince does not have to justify. He does not have to beg. He stands, and the silence does the work. But wait, what about truth? What if the accusations are false? Shouldn't truth defend itself? Machiavelli laughs at such naivety. He knew that truth does not walk alone in politics. Perception walks faster. The public will never verify the evidence. They will feel the aura. If you act guilty by defending, the truth dies in the shadows. If you act sovereign by staying silent, the truth may still surface, but your presence survives regardless. That is the Machiavellian cut. Do not worship truth. Worship perception. Do not cling to fairness. Cling to strength. The herd will forget the rumor in a week. They will remember your silence for years. This is why silence is freedom, and freedom is power. But silence is only one half of Machiavelli's law. The other half is sharper, more brutal. It is the command he would whisper into your ear if you were standing at his side in Florence, begging him for advice on how to keep your crown. Stop defending yourself. Machiavelli saw it in rulers, in generals, in popes. The desperate urge to justify, to prove innocence, to clean every rumor, to answer every critic. He despised it. Why? Because the act of defending is already submission. It signals that you've accepted the accuser's frame. It tells the world, their words matter enough to bend me. And once you bend, even slightly, they never stop pressing. Look at the pattern. A prince accused of corruption responds with long speeches. He produces letters, witnesses, excuses. The more he explains, the more guilty he looks. Another prince, one far colder, says nothing. He executes a law, commands a parade, changes the subject of the realm. Within a week, the rumor is forgotten. One was consumed. The other consumed the narrative itself. Machiavelli understood the psychology. When you defend yourself, you elevate the critic. You confirm that their accusation holds weight. You give their words a platform they could never have built alone. And worse, you lower yourself into the mud, where every word you utter is dragged down by suspicion. Silence is one remedy, but there is another Machiavellian cure, far more ruthless: offense. If you must respond, respond with an action so decisive, so undeniable, that words become irrelevant. He writes in The Prince, "Men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries. For heavy ones, they cannot." The same applies to words. Small rumors should be ignored. Large ones should be crushed under deeds so large that no tongue can compete. This is the law. When accused, do not defend. Demonstrate. Think of Cesare Borgia again. His name was dragged through the filth of Italy. Murderer, betrayer, monster. Did he respond with speeches? Did he print proclamations? No, he staged executions in the public square, consolidating power. He made alliances that shifted the map of Italy. His enemies' words drowned beneath the avalanche of his deeds. And Machiavelli, observing closely, recorded the lesson. People remember what you do, not what you explain. But let's sharpen this further. Why does defending yourself fail so catastrophically? Because it collapses authority. Authority is not reason. Authority is perception. It is the aura that says, "I am untouchable, therefore I lead." The moment you defend, you puncture the aura. You admit that perception matters to you, that your power depends on explanation, that you are not fact, you are argument. And no one respects argument. They only respect fact. This is why kings wore crowns and robes, to make themselves visible as fact. Not negotiable, not debatable. The crown did not argue. It simply existed. Machiavelli knew that modern rulers, whether princes of Florence or executives of boardrooms, need a different kind of crown: unreactive presence. The person who does not flinch when attacked gains more power in the silence than any speech could offer. Notice how this plays out in modern life. We see it online. Someone accused of weakness rushes to post rebuttals, screenshots, explanations. They drown in their own noise. Another person, hit with the same attack, says nothing. Days later, they launch a new product, release a work, win a contract. Who holds respect? Not the one gasping for air in the swamp of arguments. Respect clings to the one who acted instead of defended. You see it in relationships. One partner hurls accusations. You don't care, you don't listen, you don't try. The other collapses into pleading, explaining, defending their every move. Respect drains from the room. Compare this to the one who responds with calm boundaries, a decision, a standard, a line. They do not explain their worth, they live it. Respect follows not from speeches, but from the frame they hold. You see it in leadership. A weak leader defends every choice. He opens the floor to endless debate about whether he is just, whether his motives are pure. The strong leader states the direction and moves. His silence is not emptiness. It is a declaration. The results will speak, and that is all that matters. Now here's the Machiavellian paradox. If you refuse to defend yourself, you will be accused of arrogance. People will call you cold, cruel, tyrannical, and Machiavelli would grin. Because those accusations prove the law is working. The herd cannot tolerate the figure who does not kneel to their words. They will call him a monster, a manipulator, a villain. but they will still obey him. Better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. And defending yourself never inspires fear. It inspires pity. Consider how this plays inside your own psychology. Why do you defend? Because you fear rejection. You fear being misunderstood. You fear being cast out of the circle. Machiavelli knew this fear. He lived inside courts where reputation could kill. But he also knew the deeper truth. Defending yourself does not save you. It accelerates your downfall. The courtier who rushes to explain looks desperate. Desperation smells like weakness. Weakness invites predators. So he taught the opposite discipline. Hold the silence. Take the blow. Show that you are not moved by words. Or better, reply not with words, but with action that reorders the field. This is how power works. It is not logical. It is theatrical. A stage. A performance of strength. And the strongest performance is not endless dialogue. It is the refusal to enter the dialogue at all. But let's not misunderstand Machiavelli. He is not saying you should never speak. He is saying you should never speak to defend. Speak to declare. Speak to command. Speak to create new reality. Defensiveness is reactive. Command is active. The prince who reacts is already a servant. The prince who declares is already obeyed. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, to plead, to show your receipts, pause. Remember Florence. Remember Borgia. Remember the law. Do not explain. Execute. But what does this look like in practice? Let's ground it. A professional accused of incompetence does not send paragraphs of rebuttal. He delivers results so undeniable the accusation evaporates. A creator accused of irrelevance does not argue with critics. She produces work that shifts the conversation. A leader accused of corruption does not beg for trust. He enforces law so decisively that the people feel the weight of order in their bones. The principle applies even in the smallest rooms. Someone mocks your silence at dinner. Do not defend. Change the subject with calm gravity. Someone questions your worth at work. Do not plead. Present the standard of your work without commentary. Someone spreads rumor about you. Do not chase it. Build so visibly that the rumor looks petty by comparison. Each time, you are applying the Machiavellian law. Defend nothing, demonstrate everything. And here is where it sharpens into the blade's edge. There will be moments when silence costs. When your refusal to defend loses you allies, friends, applause. Machiavelli would not deny this. He would tell you the same thing he told princes. Your survival does not depend on applause. It depends on control. And control belongs not to the one who explains himself, but to the one who directs the stage. The more you defend, the smaller you appear. The less you defend, the larger your shadow grows. This is why he counseled ruthlessness, not cruelty for cruelty's sake, but the refusal to kneel to perception. Words will always be thrown. If you fight each one, you will die of exhaustion. If you fight none, you live beyond the reach of chatter. And so the law becomes clear. Silence is power. Action is defense. Words are cheap. Facts are expensive. Defending yourself is begging. Demonstrating yourself is ruling. And those who rule do not argue, they act. So let them accuse. Let them whisper. Let them spit. Let them imagine. Every moment they waste in chatter is a moment you gain in building. Every rumor they spread becomes the shadow of your silence. Every insult becomes a mirror of their own insecurity. You, untouched, unbent, unexplainable, stand like the stone in Florence. Machiavelli would bow to no herd, no mob, no crowd. Neither should you. Stop defending yourself. Build instead. Demonstrate instead. Rule instead. Because the coldest power move is not to win the argument. It is to make the argument irrelevant. And once you master that, you no longer chase respect. Respect chases you. The herd will not admit it, but their eyes will betray them. They will follow the one who speaks least and proves most. That is Machiavelli's law of power, and it has no exceptions.